What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for a simple, friendly interview and instead is trapped in an on-air interrogation that cuts deeper than anything he's faced in a courtroom? Today, we're breaking down the moment Brad Pitt didn't just push back. He walked off the view after Sonny Hostin crossed a line so sharp, so personal, the entire set went silent. And trust me, you won't believe the exact sentence that finally made Brad stop, stand up, and say, "Enough." Brad walked onto the set with that familiar, easy smile, the one everyone in America recognizes. He shook a few hands, adjusted his jacket, gave a little wave toward the cameras. Whoopi leaned in with that warm, steady voice of hers. "Welcome back to The View, everybody. We are here with the one and only Brad Pitt." Polite applause. Brad smiled, nodded, settled into his chair. "Thanks for having me," he said. "Good to be here." Joy tossed in a light joke. Sarah chimed in with something about how great he looked for someone who does his own stunts. But down at the far end of the table, Sunny Hostin wasn't laughing. She sat with her notes closed, hands folded, watching him. Not the charming movie star sitting in front of her, but the man behind all the headlines. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp, almost clinical. She wasn't part of the small talk. She was waiting, and Brad felt it. Joy was in joke mode. Sarah was curious and friendly. Sunny was quiet. Too quiet. Whoopi started where everyone expected. "So Brad," she said, "this new film, it's already getting a lot of buzz. Tell us about the character you're playing." Brad leaned forward a little, slipping into the rhythm he'd done 1,000 times before. "He's a guy who spent years running from the worst thing he ever did," Brad explained, "and now it's finally catching up with him. He's got to face his past, face what he did to his family, and actually deal with it instead of just pretending it didn't happen." Sarah nodded. "It sounds intense," she said. "Emotionally, not just physically." "Oh yeah," Brad said. "It's not just about fights and car chases. It's about guilt, regret. What happens when you can't hide anymore?" He didn't know it yet, but that last sentence was the one Sonny had been waiting for. She finally speaks. She leaned forward, just a little. Not enough to make it look dramatic on camera. Just enough for Brad to know she was stepping into the conversation. "Interesting character," Sonny said, her tone smooth but edged. Forced to face his past, Brad turned his head toward her. He gave her that polite, open expression. Sonny didn't blink. "Tell me something, Brad," she continued, eyes locked on his. "When was the last time you faced yours?" The question didn't sound like a normal talk show question. It didn't sound curious. It sounded like a blade. Brad paused. He knew exactly what she meant. She wasn't talking about his character anymore. She wasn't talking about the movie. She was dragging the real Brad Pitt onto the table, right next to the fictional one, and slicing the line between them. The smile stayed on his face, but it tightened. Just a little at the corners. "That's a pretty broad question," he said calmly. "Life's full of moments where you face your past." Sonny didn't move. "That's not what I asked," she replied, still calm. "I asked, when was the last time you faced yours?" Brad glanced down at the table, just for a heartbeat. When he looked back up, the smile was still there, but his eyes were different now, more guarded, less friendly. He decided to draw a line. "I'm here to talk about the movie," Brad said, his voice still polite but firmer now. "My past isn't today's headline. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sharp. He didn't snap, but it was a clear answer. No, not today. Not like this." Sonny didn't back off. She didn't soften. She didn't take Brad's hint. Instead, she calmly opened her notebook. Not dramatically, not for the cameras, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where she wanted this conversation to go. And that's when the energy around the table changed. Whoopi shifted in her seat. Joy crossed her arms and leaned back. Sarah glanced toward the control booth like she was silently asking, "Are we really doing this?" Sonny looked down at her notes for a moment, then raised her eyes back to Brad. "You talk a lot about redemption," she began, her tone steady and clinical. "In the movie, in interviews, in past statements." Brad didn't move, but his posture sharpened just a little. Sonny continued, slow and deliberate. But redemption comes after consequences, Brad. That's how it works. You don't get one without the other. So let me ask you something. She paused, not for effect, but to make sure he was looking at her. Did you ever actually face any? The question hit harder than anything she'd said before. Brad inhaled quietly, just once. It was the first time all morning his face lost that smooth, practiced calm. If you want clarity, he said, voice lower now, ask a question. Sonny didn't blink. I just did. Brad held her stare. Then he added, and if you want drama, write a script. It wasn't loud, wasn't angry, but it was sharp enough that Sonny physically reacted. Her eyes narrowed by a fraction of an inch. A tiny change, but one that said she felt the hit. She leaned back slightly, but not in retreat, more like she was settling in for a longer fight. Oh, don't worry, she said quietly. No script needed. Then she went in for the first real personal strike of the interview. So we're just pretending the incidents never happened? Brad's jaw tightened. No dramatic reaction. Sonny leaned in again, and this time there was no attempt at subtlety, no attempt to keep it within the boundaries of an interview. People want accountability, she said flatly. Real accountability. Not the kind that lives in press releases or carefully worded statements. So tell me, Brad, is accountability something you believe applies to everyone, or just to people who don't have movie star lawyers cleaning up after them? It wasn't a question, it was a swing. Brad didn't flinch, but something in his expression cooled. His voice dropped half an octave. Calmer, quieter, but unmistakably sharper. You're not asking questions, he said. You're reciting accusations. The sentence hung. Sonny tilted her head slightly, almost amused. Oh, is that your legal team talking right now? She asked. Or is that just your PR training kicking in again? It was the first line she delivered with a hint of mockery, soft, controlled, but unmistakable. Joy shifted in her chair. Sarah looked down. Whoopi closed her eyes like she could feel the temperature rising through the table. Brad finally leaned forward, not aggressive, not defensive, just intentional, like he wanted to make sure she heard every word. Why does it sound like you came here to win? He asked quietly. Not to listen? Sonny didn't even blink. Because for once, she said, voice steady and sharp, someone has to say what others are afraid to say. Brad took a slow breath, the kind people take when they're trying to de-escalate something that's already spiraling. He sat back in his chair, straightened the edge of his jacket, and spoke in a tone that was calm on the surface but tense underneath. Let's stay professional, he said. This is an interview. It was a reminder, a soft way of saying, you've gone too far. Sonny didn't even hesitate. Professionalism died the moment you dodged a real question, she replied, almost casually, like she was commenting on the weather. No heat, no raised voice, just a clean slice. Brad's jaw tightened again. He wasn't angry yet, but the patience was thinning, and Sonny saw it. He tried redirecting, but this time he added a little edge of his own. Or maybe the problem is, he said, looking directly at her now, you miss cross-examining people. It was measured, controlled, but pointed. A reminder of who she used to be, and maybe who she still was when she thought no one else noticed. Sonny let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Only the guilty feel interrogated, she said. That line hit harder than anything she had thrown so far. Brad froze for half a beat, not enough for the cameras to make it obvious, but enough for everyone at that table to feel the shift. The tension exploded this time. Brad finally leaned in, elbows on the table, his voice low and controlled. But this time the calm wasn't polite. It was deliberate. Say it plainly, he said. What do you want from me? Sonny didn't even shift in her seat. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. Honesty, she replied. The thing you've avoided for years. The sentence landed with a dull, heavy impact. Not sharp like before, but blunt. Brad exhaled through his nose, steady but tense. He had tried to keep the conversation on rails. He had tried to redirect, soften, reset. Sonny wasn't taking any of it. You're turning personal opinions into public verdicts, he said. Still level, still measured. But this time, the warning underneath was clear. Sonny fired back immediately. No hesitation, no soft edge. Verdicts only hurt when they're true. Sonny didn't circle it again. She went straight for the jugular. The kind of line that doesn't just sting, it detonates. Your actions were indefensible, Sonny said, every word steady and sharp. Public record or not, you know that. Brad's entire posture shifted. The calm, the patience, the controlled tone. It all dropped at once. He pushed back his chair and stood up, not in anger, but in raw disbelief, like someone who had just watched the last boundary get erased in front of him. You just labeled me guilty, Brad said, voice tight, without evidence. That's slander. It wasn't loud, but the edge in his tone made the room go still. Sonny didn't flinch. She didn't look intimidated. She didn't even blink. She rose slowly from her chair, matching his height, meeting him eye to eye across the table. Truth isn't slander, she said, and you wouldn't be this angry if it wasn't true. The air between them snapped. For the first time in the entire interview, Brad didn't hold back. The restraint broke. The frustration finally surfaced. You're not searching for truth, he said, stepping forward just slightly. You're hunting for a headline, and you chose my name to chase it. That line wasn't defensive. It was an accusation, a counterstrike. Sonny didn't move an inch. No, Brad, she replied, her voice lower now but more forceful. I chose accountability. Your name just happened to be attached to it. Brad's breathing was tight now, his voice stripped of every layer of Hollywood polish. Whatever patience he'd walked in with was gone. He pointed at the table, then at Sonny, as if drawing a line between the two. This isn't an interview, he said, low and steady. It's a public execution. Sonny didn't sit, didn't back up, didn't blink. She fired back instantly, like she'd been waiting for that exact opening. Then maybe, she said, voice cutting clean through the room, you should have lived a life that didn't need defending. It hit harder than anything she'd thrown all morning. Joy let out a quiet gasp. Sarah froze. Whoopi closed her eyes for half a second. The kind of seconds someone takes when they know there's no turning this around. Brad took one step forward, not threatening, but standing like a man who refused to be painted into a corner. And maybe you should learn the difference, he said, pronouncing each word slowly, between justice and vengeance. Sonny's stare sharpened, like he'd confirmed something she believed long before he walked onto the stage. She didn't even pause. Walk away, Brad, she said. That's your real pattern. Leave before the truth lands. It wasn't shouted. It was delivered with the cold precision of someone who believed she had the final word, and didn't mind twisting the knife as she said it. Brad stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He took a breath. Then he slowly faced her again. And for the first time, there was no smile, no controlled charm, no attempt to maintain the guest on a talk show persona. Just the man, tired, angry. The only truth today, Brad said, voice steady, is that you turned this chair into a weapon, and that's why I'm done here. He didn't wait for a response. He didn't look at the other hosts. He didn't look at the cameras. He simply turned and walked away. Not fast, not dramatic, but final. This time, he didn't stop. Not at the end of the table. Not at the edge of the set. Not even when Sonny opened her mouth like she might say something else. Brad Pitt left the frame, and the room went silent in a way no TV studio ever plans for. The execution, or the ambush, depending on who you ask, was over. He disappeared behind the curtain, and the air he left behind felt heavier than before, like the heat of an argument still hanging in a doorway long after the shouting stops. Sonny stood there for a few seconds, still facing the direction he had gone. She didn't chase him. She didn't call after him. She just watched him go. Then slowly she sat back down in her chair. For the first time all morning, her expression didn't match her voice. The steel was still there. Sonny never lost that. But behind it was something else. A flicker of uncertainty. A brief question crossing her own mind about whether she had struck too hard or exactly as intended. She'd pushed him out the door. She'd won the confrontation, but the victory didn't feel clean. It felt complicated, messy, heavy. Because Sunny didn't just challenge Brad, she showed a side of herself the audience rarely sees. The prosecutor, the fighter, the woman who never walks away from a confrontation, even when everyone else wishes she would. Up at the table, Joy and Sarah exchanged a look, the kind that asks, "What now?" Whoopi let out a long, slow breath, like she'd been holding it for 10 minutes straight. Sunny finally folded her hands on the table. Not triumphant, not defeated, just still. The fire had gone out, but the smoke was everywhere. And that was the real ending of the moment. Brad walked out with his pride intact but shaken. Sunny stayed behind with her point made, but her image rattled. Two different wounds, two different costs. But the biggest thing left behind was the line. The invisible line between interview and interrogation, between journalism and judgment. That line didn't just blur that morning, it burned. What do you think really happened here? Did Sunny push for justice? Or did she cross a line she should have never stepped over? Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every single one. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next explosive showdown. More clashes, more truth. More moments that daytime TV wishes it could hide. See you in the next story.